In 1876, the Ottoman Empire entered a period of profound political and social transformation. The deposition of Sultan Abdul Aziz and the brief experiment with constitutional governance had exposed the empire to both opportunity and instability. Amid this uncertainty, Abdul Hamid II ascended to the throne, initially viewed as a potentially reform-minded ruler, capable of navigating the empire through a turbulent period. However, the promise of constitutionalism would soon give way to autocracy, as the young sultan faced mounting internal dissent, nationalist movements, and external pressures from European powers. Abdul Hamid II's approach to governance was characterized by a deliberate consolidation of power. Within 2 years of assuming the throne, he suspended the Ottoman Constitution of 1876, dissolved parliament, and established an autocratic regime that would endure for over 3 decades. This decision reflected both personal ambition and a strategic response to the empire's complex challenges. By concentrating authority in the Sultanate, Abdul Hamid sought to maintain control over a diverse and fractious population, while countering the rising tide of nationalist and reformist movements that threatened the cohesion of the state. Central to Abdul Hamid's vision was the promotion of pan-Islamism, a political and ideological framework designed to unify the empire's Muslim population. By emphasizing the Sultan's role as Caliph of all Muslims, he sought to foster loyalty among subjects spanning the Balkans, Anatolia, the Arab lands, and Central Asia. This policy was not merely symbolic. It was supported by a series of practical initiatives, including investments in education, religious institutions, and public infrastructure designed to connect the Muslim heartlands of the empire. Pan-Islamism also served as a counterbalance to European encroachment, providing a unifying narrative at a time when the empire's territorial and political integrity was increasingly under threat. One of Abdul Hamid's most ambitious infrastructure projects was the construction of the Hijaz Railway, linking Damascus to Medina. This railway was intended to facilitate the annual Hajj pilgrimage, improve administrative control over the Arabian provinces, and strengthen connections between the Ottoman core and its distant territories. Alongside the railway, a telegraph network was expanded, enabling rapid communication across the vast empire. These technological investments reflected Abdul Hamid's recognition that modernization and centralization were essential to sustaining imperial authority, even as he maintained an autocratic political framework. Yet despite these achievements, the empire faced persistent unrest in key regions. The Balkans in particular became a center of nationalist agitation. Christian populations, inspired by nationalist movements elsewhere in Europe, increasingly resisted Ottoman authority. Revolts erupted in Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and other Balkan territories, often met with harsh military suppression. In the eastern provinces, tensions between Armenians and the central government intensified, fueled by both local grievances and international concern for minority rights. These conflicts highlighted the limitations of Abdul Hamid's pan-Islamic strategy, as efforts to unify Muslim subjects did little to placate non-Muslim populations seeking autonomy or protection. The Russo-Turkish War of the 1877–78 represented a major turning point in Abdul Hamid's reign. Russia, positioning itself as the protector of Orthodox Christian populations in the Balkans, launched a campaign against the Ottoman Empire that resulted in a devastating military defeat. Ottoman forces were pushed back on multiple fronts, with Russian troops advancing deep into the Balkans and threatening strategic regions near Istanbul. The war exposed weaknesses in the empire's military infrastructure and strategic planning, revealing the challenges of defending a sprawling, multi-ethnic state against a determined European power. The subsequent Treaty of San Stefano initially granted significant territorial concessions to Russia and established a large autonomous Bulgarian principality. However, the treaty alarmed other European powers, particularly Britain and Austria-Hungary, who feared Russian dominance in the region. The Congress of Berlin later revised the treaty, reducing Russian gains and creating a more balanced distribution of power in the Balkans. Nevertheless, the Ottoman Empire suffered substantial territorial losses, marking a critical moment in the decline of its European holdings. These setbacks not only weakened the empire geopolitically, but also contributed to a profound sense of vulnerability within its leadership and population. The territorial losses precipitated a major refugee crisis. Large numbers of Muslim populations, including Circassians, Bosniaks, Albanians, and Crimean Tatars, were displaced from the Balkans and other lost territories, fleeing into remaining Ottoman lands in Anatolia and parts of the empire's European holdings. These migrations created new demographic pressures, straining resources and complicating governance. While the refugees contributed to the empire's labor force and economic potential, their arrival also heightened tensions in already unstable regions, creating challenges for social cohesion and administrative control. Abdul Hamid's government faced the daunting task of integrating these displaced populations while maintaining order and asserting authority over diverse provinces. Internally, Abdul Hamid's autocratic rule relied on extensive surveillance and censorship to suppress dissent. A network of spies and informants monitored political activity, ensuring that opposition movements could be identified and neutralized. Educational reforms in state-supported institutions were carefully managed to align with the Sultan's ideological vision, promoting loyalty to the throne and the principles of pan-Islamism. Although this centralized control maintained a degree of stability, it also fostered resentment among the empire's educated elite, who viewed restrictions on political participation and civil liberties as antithetical to modernization and progress. Despite these challenges, Abdul Hamid II invested in public works and modernization projects, including schools, hospitals, and scientific institutions. His reign saw improvements in healthcare, education, and infrastructure, reflecting a recognition that governance required both authority and administrative competence. These initiatives, while constrained by autocratic oversight, demonstrated the Sultan's pragmatic approach, using modernization and technological development as instruments of control and cohesion. Abdul Hamid's rule was marked by a careful balancing act, asserting central authority while responding to external pressures, managing nationalist movements, and integrating displaced populations. Pan-Islamism provided ideological cohesion, infrastructure projects reinforced administrative reach, and autocracy ensured rapid decision-making. Yet these measures could not fully resolve the structural vulnerabilities of the empire. Military defeats, territorial losses, and persistent unrest highlighted the limits of centralized control, foreshadowing the challenges that would confront his successors. In historical perspective, Abdul Hamid II's reign represents both continuity and change in the late Ottoman period. His autocracy contrasted sharply with the constitutional aspirations of 1876, yet it also reflected an enduring Ottoman concern with survival, cohesion, and adaptation to a rapidly changing world. The emphasis on pan-Islamism, infrastructure development, and centralized governance exemplifies the empire's efforts to preserve authority and legitimacy, even as nationalist and foreign pressures intensified. By the time of his later years, Abdul Hamid had established a complex legacy. He maintained territorial integrity in some regions, promoted modernization and connectivity, and sought to unify the empire's Muslim population. However, the persistence of unrest in the Balkans and eastern provinces, coupled with military setbacks and economic challenges, underscored the fragility of his achievements. The refugee crisis, in particular, highlighted the human cost of territorial contraction and the social complexities that accompanied population movements. Abdul Hamid II's period of rule left an indelible mark on the Ottoman Empire. It demonstrated the potential of centralized authority to enforce order and implement reforms, while also revealing the limits of autocratic governance in the face of social, political, and international pressures. His investments in the Hijaz Railway, telegraph networks, and education established foundations for future modernization, even as his suspension of constitutional governance delayed political pluralism and civil liberties. Ultimately, the reign of Abdul Hamid II reflects the enduring challenges of late Ottoman governance, balancing authority with reform, maintaining territorial integrity, responding to nationalist pressures, and integrating diverse populations. It illustrates the tensions inherent in an empire attempting to modernize while preserving tradition and control, navigating both internal divisions and external threats. As history moved forward, The consequences of his policies, territorial losses, refugee movements, and centralized infrastructure would shape the Ottoman Empire's final decades, influencing the political and social landscape up to the First World War. In conclusion, Abdulhamid II's era was one of paradoxes. Autocratic and authoritarian in politics, yet innovative in infrastructure and administrative modernization. Conservative in suppressing constitutionalism, yet forward-looking in unifying Muslim populations through pan-Islamism. Successful in maintaining some stability, yet challenged by persistent unrest and military defeats. The Sultan's reign provides a lens through which to understand the complex interplay of governance, reform, nationalism, and survival in a declining imperial world. By combining central authority with strategic modernization, Abdul Hamid II sought to steer the Ottoman Empire through an era of unprecedented challenges, leaving a legacy that continues to inform the historical understanding of the late Ottoman state.